welcome everybody to this edition of the Singapore Convention on Mediation seminar series brought to you by IMI and SIMI. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Laura Skillen, the Executive Director of the International Mediation Institute. And we have as well with us Marcus, who's the CEO of the Singapore International Mediation Institute.
Thank you, Laura. Pleasure to be here as always.
As always, great. So for those who haven't used Zoom webinar before, you'll see we'll be having a presentation from our fantastic guest, followed by a Q&A. So if you do have any questions as Deniz is speaking or afterwards, please look for the little Q&A icon, either at the bottom of your screen on your computer, and I think on the bottom right on your phone. So put all questions in there. But with no further ado, I would like to introduce the fabulous Deniz Kite. She's an IMI certified mediator. She's a trainer. She runs GMN in Turkey and the world, and of course is very active in mediation in Turkey and the region. So welcome.
Thank you. So thank you for welcoming me. I'm a little bit excited. And I would like to, I prepared a little presentation, and I will show you the presentation as well during my speech. And firstly, I will focus a little bit on mediation in Turkey. And then I will give you some numbers and statistics. And then the international steps Turkey has been taking. And then I ask the question if we are ready for the Singapore Convention. And then our challenges and advantages. So, actually, one thing I like to say about mediation is that for Turkey, actually, it was not like an alternative dispute resolution, but for traditionally, it has been the dispute resolution for hundreds of years. So for us, it's not a new or recent thing, but it was the dispute resolution method already. And the mediation we understand today, the first law 6325 was in 2012. And the effect was in 2013, and it was only about voluntary mediation for civil disputes. Then in labor court's law started in 7036, which was in 2017, and effect was in 2018. But this was about then mandatory mediation for labor disputes. And then in 2018, we had the law 7155, effect in 2019, and this brought us mandatory mediation for commercial disputes. So I want to give some numbers. So this is the legal side of it. As I have 15 minutes, so I'm going to start to keep it as short as possible. First, in Turkey, although we have law, but mediation is not yet recognized as a separate, how to say, profession. It is still like a law faculty graduate, and most of the lawyers, it's like a side job for them. So it's not really a separate profession. So only law faculty graduates can be mediators in Turkey. Now the number of registered mediators are 16,500, and there are at least this number of mediators trained, but they didn't pass examinations, and so they're not registered by the Ministry of Justice. We have 65 mediation associations in different cities, and their target is developing skills and knowledge for mediators and creating awareness for mediation. And we have mediation centers. I have to say, when coming to the mediation associations, we do not have community mediation or so. Unfortunately. So we have over 200 mediation centers. They can be established as joint stock companies with minimum of 5 partners, and all those 5 partners have to be lawyer mediators. And I want to give some statistics I received from, actually yesterday, from Ministry of Justice website. The voluntary mediation between 2013 and 2019 had almost 240,000 cases, and the agreement, the agreement reached was 97%, which I find wonderful actually. Mandatory mediation for labor disputes, it's the last 2 years, and it's almost 740,000 cases. And the settlement, the agreement is 65%, but there is a little bit trick in this, although it looks like 65%. Some people using mediation, reaching to an agreement, but they do not sign the agreement by the mediator, not to pay the fee, but they do the agreement outside. So I can easily say this would be another additional 20%. And mandatory mediation for commercial disputes, it was only last year, and it is 146,413 cases. And the agreement is very, very low in compared to the others. It's only 57%. So here I want to mention some international steps Turkey has been taking for mediation, and I don't mean only mediation that our Ministry of Justice has been introduced. Firstly, Turkey had the idea or the target to be a dispute resolution center for the greater region, which included the Africa, especially the Islamic countries in Africa, the Islamic world, of course, Caucasus, and Central Asia. So this was the target since 2009, 2010. So Turkey, with the co-chairing with Finland, they've started a group at the United Nations, which is called Friend for Mediation. It started in September 2010. At the moment, it consists of 52 member states and 8 regional organizations, and I can share the link if it is required. But then Turkey, because it has the target to be the dispute resolution center in the greater region, started Friends for Mediation program within the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, in 2014. This is still the co-chair Turkey and Finland, but this happened during the Swiss presidency. And then Turkey started within the Organization for Islamic Cooperation in 2018, another program, another resolution, actually, strengthening mediation capacity. And the co-chairs are Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Gambia. So if you look at all the steps the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been doing, of course, last year we signed the Singapore Convention. You can see all the steps has been taken, bring Turkey to the role of being a dispute resolution center in its greater area. Then before that, I want to mention that since 2011, Turkey has been organizing mediation conferences broadly, internationally, at every level, ministry level and the NGO level, and the mediators from the field, and as well for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. There have been twice conferences in Vienna, and one of them was sponsored by and financed by Turkey too. And also the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, which was in Dakar, Turkey was part of it greatly. So is Turkey ready for Singapore Convention? Well, actually, from legal point of view, we are expecting it either in September or latest by the end of the year, but this year definitely. The COVID-19 changed things a little bit, as we all know, but it is expected. And actually, be able to, for being ready for Singapore Convention, actually Turkey is doing some changes, going through some changes. One of them is mediation law is changing completely. You see, when mediation started in Turkey, we adopted it some partly from England and Italy and so on. But when we get the experience, we started honoring our traditions. So now people are really kind of saying, oh, we have to have a Turkish style of mediation. We have to develop our own way. So mediation law is taking this into consideration. And then mediation trainings are changing. At the beginning, it was only 48 hours, and then it's changed to 85 hours. But it didn't include practice. It had a little bit of ethics, and so the new trainings will change, having more practice and ethics and so on. And we suffered a lot that the trainings were not efficient from the beginning, and I had lots of concerns at the beginning, but it's changing too. And then law on mediation centers is under discussion, so this also will be coming soon. There is for example, as I said, mediation was mostly considered like a lawyer's side job. But now when mediators are getting practice, they realize that it's really a profession. So I'm very, very glad. And they realize we really need mediating a profession and with strong ethics. And I'm very glad that at least it is loudly spoken. So this is what we came. So it's good for the convention. And people are also realizing, as they were lawyers and they were thinking, oh, well, we can mediate any disputes. So as the mandatory mediation started, they realized that they need to expertise. No? For example, commercial mediation is so many areas and so many fields, so many sectors. And they realize now, oh, we have to really go to specialization, and we have to become experts on certain disputes and so on. This is also a very good step. And Ministry of Justice is also taking steps for that. And recently, this is the good side of COVID-19, because as everybody is going webinars, and I did the first one on Singapore Convention, but there are many webinars on Singapore Convention, and which is good. And tomorrow there will be one too. And I think mediators in Turkey now start that there is a competition. You see, it was local and they were the kings and queens, and now they realized, oh my God, something is happening now. Then international level we have to go. And I'm happy because here we have, as GMN Institute, a role, and also my accreditation is very, very important. I really appreciate that. And also another thing, culture sensitivity is spoken. It was not before because it was local, and now everybody is saying, oh my God, what will we do with another culture? And this awareness itself is good. And we will be, as GMN, starting the first training on this matter, so I'm happy about it. But we have some real challenges. Firstly, we are coming from a relationship, how to say, in our culture, relations matter a lot. So it's not very much, how to say, I don't know, relations matter. So if you have a good relation, you can do things, huh? And one challenge is, I hope and I wish that Ministry of Justice, Mediation Department will be impartial to all mediators, associations and centers. And they are speaking now that the mandatory mediations would be only referred to centers, which would be a very pity because there are some really good mediators. They don't want to be part of an association or a center. They just want to have their offices. And if they will be out of this process, and they can be wonderful international mediators too, so we will see. I hope we will not fail in this. So will only be mediation centers permitted? There is no law yet, no related law, but it's already more than 200 centers. Everybody is hearing, oh, only mediation centers can have this. And so they establish 5 come together or more, and then they establish a center, but there is no related law. And then how the quality be assured? You know, this is really a challenge. And there are some wonderful centers. I don't mean in that way something, how to say, I don't want to be unpolite or, you know, untrue, but you see, we have to consider how the quality will be assured. This is a really question. And then, will there be high standards for mediators? Because we learned from the past, from the training point of view, from the ethics, we failed. So how it will be by the new law, will it be possible? Will there be a separate profession with strong ethics, or still will be only done by lawyers? This is also a challenge. And I don't think it would be fine if we signed and if we will go through the convention. And then in Turkey, mediation, when the law started in, so they made some little advertisements, you know, Ministry of Justice, but those advertisements were more likely that, you know, if you are an SME, don't go to court, don't spend much money, just go to mediation. So mediation introduced like a, how I can say, you know, like small companies' choice. So this was a very, very bad introduction. And now there is a perception, you know, the big companies go to court or arbitration, only the little ones go to mediation. So this is a real challenge. This has to change. So, business people still need to be more aware. Companies still need to be more aware. Most of them do not include mediation clause still into the agreements. Technology inclusion, of course. I mean, COVID-19 was great. Everybody at least tried something. But also from the legal point of view, when we are now going through the new law, I think it has to be correctly included. And then we have lack of professional management at mediation centers, because it comes also from lawyering, that the lawyers didn't have, as it is in the West, like in England or US, having big law firms. I mean, there are, of course, some exceptions, but in general, they didn't have with a really management, a manager at the top, secretary, and it was not run like a company, the lawyer offices. So the same came to the mediation centers. So 5 lawyers or 10 lawyers, mediators coming together, they have a mediation center, but they mostly lack of professional management. So this also is a challenge. They have to realize that some other managers should manage the mediation centers. So this is the challenges. And then we have advantages. Firstly, we started a little bit bad, and it's good because we learned out of it. So we are fully experienced now. We have lots of lessons learned about training, ethics, practice, and so we are very experienced. And there are some really, really devoted mediators. I appreciate all of them. They really kept it going, and they really believed in. I appreciate all those mediators. And also mediation department at the Ministry of Justice, they are very willing to do it. So they are not doing it because by law or it's a must, but they are really willing to do it. And presence of IMI accreditation, of course, because it brings another level. Yes, and I'm very happy about it because it really brings another perception to mediation. And the others are like, for example, the role of Turkey, the last 3. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs developed a great perception and awareness in the greater area. But this is about the role of Turkey now. I'm talking about as an advantage. Because it's part of the culture for long years, for example, we call the traditional mediators at Aksakal. And if I go to Azerbaijan or Kyrgyzstan or in Cyprus or in Pakistan, they have another word, but they have the same. So we speak the same language, and it's the same for Africa. So it is not like the Western world, but it is like we know it from our tradition. And this is an advantage for Turkey. We speak the same language. And then in the greater region, Turkey is respected, and Turkey does not have bad memories. For example, in Africa, you know, I mean, Turkey was not an imperial country in that sense, or a kingdom or whatever. So in those regions, or also in Turkish republics, the countries do not have bad memories, so they accept our, how to say, experience and our leading role. So these are our advantages. And I hope I was correct with my 15 minutes, right?
I think you're bang on, yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect.
But I've also got some questions for you myself. So I'm going to be very, very cheeky and actually ask you one of my questions first. Because you mentioned a lot about the specific mediation culture in Turkey. And so firstly, you mentioned the importance of relationships. And I was wondering, how would you characterize a good working relationship in Turkey? I mean, how do you think this is different from how it is in other places?
Group relationship. Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, this is a little bit more difficult to explain, because you see, for example, a simple sample. If there is an examination within a classroom, and if you are in Finland, and if there is one person very clever, studied, and so on, writing the examination, and if the rest of the classroom asks this person, can you give me some copies? That person will not do it. In Turkey, this person will share every information. So if this is ethical, if the knowledge is the same, so this is how we are in a good way supporting each other. On the other hand side, is not really good. You see? This is what I mean. And then if I would like to apply for a job, and if I know somebody from somewhere, I would not be so much considered with my experiences, my knowledge, and so on, but it would be very much likely that I will get this because of the relationship. And how it comes to group relationships, people will not be very open-minded and very clear sharing, for example, feedbacks. You see, the tradition, actually, it would be a wonderful way to support somebody, to strengthen somebody, to give the right feedbacks, but rather we would not do it. And it affects the entire group work. Instead of talking directly, we would be a little bit maybe gossiping behind it. So, and sometimes this is not clear communication. No? This could cause conflict itself. So I hope I could answer you.
Absolutely. And so thinking then a bit more about culture within Turkey, because you said Turkey has a very specific mediation culture, which might be different to other places. I mean, how do you see? Yeah, go ahead.
In this case, it's different like this. In every, let's say in a village, in a little group of people, in small parts of society, even within in a house or so, there is always kind of respected people, we call it. Aksakal means white bear, actually, bear. So, so this person can be a woman, it can be a man, it could be a teacher, could be an imam, it can be anyone. But this person probably knows all local people and their interests and their relations. So this traditional mediation, they choose because they trust this person. The traditional mediator is fair, clever, knows them best, wise, and so on. And then, of course, the traditional mediator living together with the people, he has power, actually, authority, because everybody respects, and can decide. Actually, this way, it's not like mediation we understand. It's more likely arbitration, because sometimes the traditional mediation, mediator decides for the parties when they cannot reach to an agreement. But the mediator lives in the same area, and then experiences also the result of the decision he or she has been made. So it is completely depending on trust and the fairness of the mediator, actually. So the parties trust them, they know each other very well, all of them know each other, and then it's always a fair result at the end. So this is how it is differs.
And I mean, how do you think that this particular type of mediation heritage helps or hinders other styles of mediation? For example, in cities where you might not have this respected person that knows everyone, right?
Yeah, but in every family, for example, if a husband and wife is having an argument, they would go always one elder in the family first. So we wouldn't go to a lawyer or a psychologist or whatever. So we would only go to an elder neighbor or somebody in the family elder. So everybody knows it. Maybe very, very young generation now.
It makes sense, yeah. But what about in commercial disputes? Because I'm assuming there's not going to be an elder for that.
It's the same. It's the same.
Really? Okay.
For example, in the cities like Kayseri, Konya, Gaziantep, in many cities, there will be always some businessman elder than the others and respected, and you know that he is known as true for money, correct, and trustworthy, man of his word. And so if two companies would have conflicts, they would first, not always first, but they would go to that businessman to resolve their conflicts. Maybe not, for example, even in Istanbul, some regions, not all the regions, but in many cities.
So then what is the role then for professional mediator in Turkey if you have these existing structures?
Oh, it is different, because when I started mediation, it was long before the law. And for example, when you are, again, relationship matters, and you can see it like this. When a family business needs mediation, they sometimes want the disputes, the conflict within the family company, family business is not known to anybody else. So they prefer somebody like me, and sometimes they even didn't want me to go to their cities, but they came to Istanbul. So sometimes when the traditions are so strong, people, because of this relationship orientation, they don't want that their conflict, the conflict they experience is known by other people. This is one thing. And secondly, since 2012, there has been a lot of advertisement, although it is for SMEs and not really for big companies, but media is also very effective. So the perception is changing. So everybody now is realizing our tradition became a profession, you see? So it's easy to shift. Okay, now there is professionals doing it.
That's super. And now I'm going to stop being greedy, because we do have some questions from the audience as well.
Okay.
Can you see those?
Oh yes, question Q&A. How can we do Singapore mediation in Turkey? And I wonder what they mean in that.
I presume they mean how can this be implemented? I mean, because you've mentioned already that it's going to be.
We wouldn't be, I cannot answer that, but I only can say in this case that mediation law is changing, the trainings are, all of those things are changing, and it would be changing according to the convention, I would say. So I cannot at the moment give any answer, because really for the law for mediation centers, mediation law and trainings, everything is now changing. So I'm really sorry that I cannot maybe be very specific. In a couple of months maybe. This question is interesting to learn that Turkey commercial mediation is mandatory since 2019, but I also learned that there is no mediation law. No, there is a mediation law since 2012, but the law is now changing. This is a difference. So since 2018. Labor dispute, the labor disputes and commercial disputes since 2019 is mandatory, but the mediation law we have, and it's changing at the moment. So thanks for the informative presentation on Turkey. Following up on your point that mediation is compulsory for commercial disputes since 2019 and voluntary mediation in civil matters has been ongoing since 2013. To what extent over the years have disputes with government authorities? About government authorities, nothing. So I don't know one mediation that one party was government authorities resolved by mediation. But there is no mediation in that. When it is about tax paying and so on, there are only fixed law, and then you have to follow it, and there is no mediation in this case. So there has been no one-party government mediation ever since. Hi, Arda. So Arda is from Turkey. And he's a very good mediator in between. You taught us the universal ethics of mediation. Thank you very much for this. So we are more ready than the other mediators in Turkey. So as we are new code being written, what is my expectation about new mediation ethics and well, I tell you, Arda, of course, we had lots of lessons learned, and but Turkey is very consistent about its role in the greater region, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs did very, very good steps, and also some wonderful trainings for diplomats from the greater region, teaching them mediation. So I don't think that when now the law changes, that we have all this experience, and then we have the target to be a really dispute resolution center in the region, that the ethics will not be correct, or I think everything will be perfectly on an international level. I have no doubt about it. So one is that it will be all according to the international standards. The other side is how we would, as mediators or mediation department, how we will apply those laws. So it's two things. I am sure the new law will be perfectly international level. How we will bring it into practice, I think we have to discuss this, and this is the role of mediators in a broad manner. So Jasmine, is the session co-mediated most of the time? Jasmine, in Turkey we hardly have co-mediation. Very interestingly, I don't know if it is a choice, or I have no idea, or because mandatory mediation pays for one mediator, I have no idea, but it's not very often. It's not very common for us, co-mediation. So it's a solo mediation. Sandares Vara Sharma. I hope I read your name correctly. It's Turkish written, Turkish spoken. In Turkey, do mediators have immunity from legal state? If, for example, one party is later unhappy with the settlement terms agreed to or with mistaken disclosure by mediator or any party of information communicated in confidence during a private session and sues the mediator in civil courts for negligence. Well, we do not have immunity yet. This is it's a terrible situation, I have to say. I hope the new law will include that. But there are some cases the parties really sued mediators, and this was related to, as far as I know, not commercial, but it's about the labor disputes. And this was like mediator were more on the side of the company and not giving enough information to the party. And for example, when a company wanted to how to say, to fire like more than one person, 10, 20, 100 people, so they made an agreement with one mediator, and this one mediator, actually it's not a mediation, the mediator got signatures for different agreements with the employees, and so the employees later on sued the mediator, saying that this was not mediation, and so they were not informed and so on. So this happened, but there is no immunity yet. How do you think the traditional mediation can be raised to the status where a party who is not Turkish can make use of the traditional mediation, or it's foreclosed? Well, let's separate two things. For example, Turkey took great role in the conflicts in Africa, as because in Africa they have traditional mediation too. So to have the knowledge of traditional mediation, or you can say wisdom of traditional mediation, or Turkey took part also in Kyrgyzstan and so on. So if there is a mediation between, let's say, two companies from two countries, both having traditional mediation, so you can come closer within the language because you have more or less the same cultural background. But however it is traditional, let's say, in two different countries, traditions are still different. So it's even more culture sensitive in this case, because assuming Turkey and the country A both have traditional mediation, but it would be so different that we should be more culture sensitive in this case. So I wouldn't suggest that if it comes to international mediation, that we go for traditional ways. We should keep it as professional as possible, being culture sensitive. But yes, this is what I think. I hope it's an answer. Agnes Lowe says, thanks for the informative session. Do you think virtual mediation will take off in Turkey? Well, as I said, sometimes this illness, the COVID-19 is pushing us to the things we were lazy about. And so online mediation is one of them. But when we consider on mandatory mediation, labor or commercial disputes, it is still early, and I think it will, yes, take off in Turkey after it becomes very clear with the new law. And but we are very relation-oriented country, so we really like to touch. It's a lot easier, less costs, and it's really very, very easy online mediation. But in our culture, we are we need face-to-face. We will see how it works. I don't think it will be just very fast and easy, but eventually in 2-3 years time, we will be perfectly using it. So Jasmine Ma, can you share with us private caucus in Turkey as compared to Singapore? Well, I tell you, the trainings in Turkey was not the trainings in Turkey did not teach mediation as a process. So mediators, after finished their trainings, they didn't have a kind of roadmap, what to do before, what to do at the beginning, what to do during bringing out problems or negotiation and a closure. So why I'm saying this, because if you would teach mediation as a process, then you would teach mediators techniques that you can run the process. So in our mediation trainings in Turkey, both, I mean, the first one was 48 hours, the second was 85 hours, but both failed in practice and teaching mediation as a process. So mediators, when there is a kind of, how to say, sometimes, you know, people can be, the parties can be emotional and they can be loud in voice and whatever. So you can still handle them. You can still work with them. They can be together. You can mediate even when it gets really hard. But as we did not learn all those techniques, and they only learned that if the parties are louder and so on, separate them and go for caucuses. So this became like a first option for mediators. So in my life, I'm mediating for long years now. This year is 20 years, my experience in mediation. I hardly have only one family mediation. I had to caucus, only one, and they were, I don't do family mediation only twice, and I know definitely it's not my area. And only with one of them, I had to go for caucus. I prefer having them together. But in Turkey, it became like a, how to say, it's life-saving. And and in my practices, especially when I go through the IMI examinations and so on, I realize how they learn and how they practice, because there is a practice examination. And I realized that in the practice, in the caucus sessions, sometimes mediators are advising or offering solutions. So because they don't know, some of them don't know the techniques. So this is what I can say about private caucus in Turkey. So it becomes like a life-saving instrument, and they go fastly to this instead of being passionate and let the parties talk together, talk to each other. It's quickly they choose this, and usually those sessions become kind of advice sessions. I hope it's the answer. Yeah.
So Denise, I'm just going to jump in to ask one question of my own.
Yes. Yes.
So actually, as I was listening to you answer the questions, I now have two questions, but I'll keep them short. The first question is, I noticed you mentioned a lot about how important it is for Turkish mediators that they have influence, that they have a relationship with the parties, or that they have some status in society. Would you say that Turkish mediators then tend to be senior in their years, that it would be very difficult for a young Turkish mediator to get started, simply because they would not have had that kind of relationship, that kind of seniority, that it sounds like it's part of the Turkish culture, but I wanted to clarify with you.
Yes, definitely. But I want to say one thing. Traditional mediation and let's say professional mediation differs, but it is very true. To be a mediator, you have to finish law faculty and you need to have 5 years experience. But this 5 years experience still let you be under 30 years old. Yes. And the young mediators in this case, yes, having a disadvantage. Very true. Yes.
Okay. And that
But
kind
for
of...
for example, when I didn't have that when I'm now 52, let me see, in 2003, I was quite young in compared to those years. And if you consider the cultural barriers, I was a divorced woman and I was a young woman, but I still had the, how to say, I still could mediate and people will still choose me. But I think any mediator younger than 30 has difficulties, for sure.
Thank you. This is definitely not just limited to Turkey. I think it is a common challenge everywhere. And so thank you also for your encouraging words that, you know, for yourself at least, it's not just the age. If you are good, you will be able to make your mark. So the last question I wanted to ask is, you know, you mentioned a lot about how there isn't quite so much exposure to international or foreign language mediation in Turkey.
Yeah.
Where do you see developments taking place? Or do you think there are any developments, or have you seen any developments when it comes to promoting mediation in a foreign language like English in Turkey? Is there more interest in this? What are your thoughts?
Well, I had the challenge, let me say, when I organized the examinations for IMI accreditation, and some mediators they don't speak foreign language. But I didn't see it in a because Turkey, or Turkish is spoken in many countries. So for this accreditation, I didn't see it as a disadvantage. So they could work in Azerbaijan, for example, in Kyrgyzstan and blah, blah. But if, for example, SIMI would be here in Turkey and deliver trainings in English, you would definitely need a translation. We have some trainings with some universities on negotiation, and really you need a translation, to be honest. Definitely.
Super. It's nice that I wasn't the only one monopolizing questions this time. So thank you so much for joining us, Deniz. I think it's been really interesting, and I think it certainly gives us some food for thought around the cultural implications and sort of how you can actually engage with those when talking about mediation. So thank you as well to all the attendees for coming and for asking questions. Thank you, of course, to Marcus and Simi as well for joining us. And we'll see you all next time.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See you.